educating, entertaining, inspiration. Hood therapy, 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 dose get a dose of the hood. Hood therapy, dose get a dose of the hood. Hood therapy, dose get a dose of the hood. Hood therapy, dose get a dose of the hood. Hood therapy.
Your host DH none other, and we have a very special show today. Part of growing up in Oakland, we're part of gentrification, and Hood Therapy is now gentrified. We have our first guest from the other side, her people, as she stated to me earlier. Mm-hmm. And our other host today is C Legal for the People.
Hey now, say now.
And Kusum.
Yes, Kusum.
Kusum.
Yeah.
I do not want to mispronounce your name.
So good.
I'm sorry, Kusum. Now, Kusum came to me through my sister, and they both do restorative justice in the city of Oakland. And can you explain to everybody what restorative justice is first?
Yeah, sure. It's a different way of looking at. I guess it got brought in to look at crime or punishment. So the idea that our system has been based on punishment, putting people in jail. When you talk about the schools, suspending people, expelling people, restorative justice actually is a way to bring the community back together. So in our traditional, I wouldn't even say traditional, but the way that this country has developed, it's about pushing people out, right? Putting people in jail, kicking people out of schools. Restorative justice actually pulls people in and say, we are a part of a community and we need to work through this together.
Not alienating anybody.
Yeah, not alienating. And it's also recognizing that in order to transform and change behavior, the community in which someone has been a part of needs to be a part of that.
Gotcha.
So the way to hold people accountable is not to say, we're going to actually just punish you as accountability. We're going to say, do you understand what happened? What was going on for you at that time? How has the harm impacted everybody? What do you understand as your role in it? And what are you going to do to make things better? So accountability is key to that piece. So if you can be accountable, not only do you just say sorry, but you actually want to make amends, try and make it better, and then change behavior.
Gotcha.
You know, our prison system, our expulsion system, none of that actually helps people get better.
No, it doesn't. It's supposed to be rehabilitative, but it's actually not rehabilitative
at all.
And so basically, restorative justice is a form of therapy for our people.
Kind of, yeah.
And so
what people? Who you said our people? What people are you talking about?
The human race, not just black people, white people. Restorative justice is it's gonna help us to not alienate people, but to say, hey, you being a problem is not only your problem but our problem.
Heal us from what though?
What?
You said our people need healing and we need justice.
No, restorative justice.
From what?
No, basically, restorative justice is something like, put it to you like this. Okay, this child is acting up in school. Instead of suspending them, you go talk to the restorative justice person, and we'll come together as we'll talk to you, your mother, your father, and see what's really going on to why you're acting out. And that's what restorative justice is. And that they're implementing it in the school districts in Oakland now because too many people were just being kicked out of school and then they're not coming back to school.
Mm-hmm. What people? What's your name again?
Kusum.
Kusum. Before I even go further, what is that your government name or you
it's my government name? No.
What does that mean?
It means flower.
Kusum means flower.
Mm-hmm.
So back to he said, people getting kicked out of school and them coming to you. What people are being kicked out of school and what do you guys do for these people?
I mean, it's anybody, but the reason restorative justice got so strongly implemented was because there was so many black students specifically getting expelled and kicked out of school. So the Office of Civil Rights actually sued OUSD, and we're saying that there's disproportionality in suspensions and expulsions as at the same rate as it was, I believe, in the 60s. It's not specifically for black students, but if you look at the demographics of who's actually getting kicked out, getting expelled, getting pushed out of the system, it's always has been for many years, black students mostly getting pushed out. And this idea that you can actually look at students, the more likely someone is to get suspended, the higher likely is they're going to go to juvenile hall. The more time someone goes to juvenile hall, the higher likelihood they're going to get into a prison system. So the school to prison pipeline, it has been working very well for people who want that to happen. Restorative justice was one of the things they have said, we need to implement this to stop getting kids kicked out. If it's minor behavior stuff, if it's things that can get worked out, work it out. Don't just keep kicking people out. Don't just keep putting people in a system where they're going to get sent to juvenile hall, where they're going to get sent to the prison system. None of that stuff has actually shown up to be a benefit to anyone's life. I mean, maybe some people have particular examples that change their life in a positive way, but those are minor. Those are, rare examples in the midst of the whole system, and the whole system is not actually helping us.
Okay, so let me ask some very direct questions. Hopefully you can help me understand, because I'm still trying to gather understanding. Who is in control of the system that is continuously expelling and kicking kids out of this school?
White people.
White people. Who is in control of the restorative justice system?
Well, the restorative justice system is actually the philosophy in which I was trained in restorative justice comes from Native American people,
Okay.
mostly northern and eastern Canada border groupings of people. So a lot of Native folks practice this type of restorative justice, and at that time, a lot of their people were being highly incarcerated. And because of that, they were basically saying, okay, we're going to share this type of methodology to, quote unquote, the white man as a way to say we want our young people and our people to stop getting incarcerated because it's a form of genocide. And so that's how this particular form kind of got brought into the schools. So it was originally from a native of this land, but you can go to places all across the world and see how this type of community assessment or community tool is used everywhere. You can go to countries in Africa. Restorative Justice for Oakland Youth is an organization in Oakland, and they go to South Africa every year. They go to different places to look at how this type of work is actually being used in other places. So South Africa, for example, is a place that used truth and reconciliation as a way to deal with the harm that happened during apartheid. So it has been, this type of work has been used across the world in multiple ways. For different people, for communities basically saying we as a community, whatever community that is, we believe we actually have a role in helping to shift behavior that doesn't actually hurt people, it has harmed people.
Have you guys seen a change since the restorative justice has been implemented?
Yeah, I mean, statistically they say there's huge changes. I don't know the statistic breakdown. I know I used to work so I just quit, but I've worked at Oakland Tech High School for the last 11 years.
Okay.
And I've seen just doing this work at that school, not everything, but there has been a huge shift in culture, mostly because I'm really about getting the young people involved. So I train young people on how they can hold circle. Because, I'm a white woman, and I'm in my 40s. So I love young people, and they have always come to me to get support. But when young people start facilitating their own stuff, there's just a deeper ability to connect to what is going on. And then, so to me, when I first started, people didn't really understand restorative justice, but I would do conflict mediation. And then when the kids started getting more trained, they would come to me all the time. Oh, Miss Kusum, can I do this? Or they would tell me, oh, these people are about to fight. You need to come get in, or do whatever. And people would just
snitch it.
Yeah, but it was their friend. They didn't want them to fight. Yeah. They knew that, once you get to a fight, it changes the trajectory of if there can be, healing. Doesn't mean it can't happen. Yeah. But, if you can catch people before a fight happens, there's a lot more possibility of things.
When you say healing, like the trajectory of healing, I hear you use that word a lot. What is some of the things that go with healing for a person? Like, what is needed to heal?
That's a good question. I think there's a lot of things. It depends. We have our own lifetime of healing. We also have generational healing. So if we're here to talk about race and different things, we have generational harms that have never been healed. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen. There's ways in which things have been passed down through us generationally. But even in a lifetime of healing, it depends on what type of harm you've had. Sometimes someone might need healing just to have someone listen to their story. Listening to their story is going to feel healing, like, oh, you actually listened to me and you didn't just judge me. Saying a lot of times when when you're talking about kids, they'll go into the vice principal's office or whatnot, and what usually happens, people, what did you do? That's the first question. What did you do? With restorative justice and with healing, when you just ask what happened, well, what were you thinking at that time? What was going on for you? That's healing in itself. Just saying, I actually see you, and I know that you might have had something else. Like, did you come into this house because you got into a fight with your mom before you left, right? Yeah. So if you got in a fight with your mom before you left and there was a big argument, you show up to school and you're so pissed, but somebody steps on your foot in the hallway, you turn around, pop off on that person.
You're taking your anger out, not at the person you're angry at.
Right, but if you're only asking, what did you do? No one actually wanted to know what happened beforehand.
Why did you do it?
Yeah, what was going on for you at that time? And then when people get to ask that question, a lot of times young people have never even been asked that. Or how do you feel like this impacted you? How did it impact anyone else? And what are your ideas of what you could do to make it better? Gotcha. What do you think you should do to be accountable to that behavior or that action? But healing is huge. I mean, depending on the deep trauma, I was trained in social work, but it's kind of BS. Anyway, but trauma, depending on the level of trauma, your healing is going to be much, have a lot more things you need to do, right? If you were sexually abused as a kid for 10 years, your healing path is going to be way more profound than, say, you got beat by your mom a couple times, right? I mean, and some people might say that's not even traumatizing. It depends on how it,
to each individual is different also.
Yeah, exactly.
So how would you feel if a black person was to say, you know what, if a majority of black kids are getting expelled, I should be top priority to get hired by this social justice program because I can identify with these kids more than anybody else. How would you feel about that?
I agree.
Why so?
Because people, when you're from a similar understanding, a similar walk in life, a similar cultural background, you can understand where someone is going through more, right? One of the things I really appreciate about the Restorative Justice Program at OUSD is that there is so many black men actually working in that program. And there's just a lot more relationships that you can build. A young black man coming in and say there was a situation going on. If he doesn't know me, he's going to look at me like, how are you going to understand? How are you going to relate to anything, right? So say you're the social justice, or say you're the restorative justice person, they're going to come to you and automatically feel some type of connection. Like, oh, okay, he's going to at least understand what it feels like to walk in the skin. So there's just a lot more that you could possibly do. That doesn't mean that I can't be impactful in some type of way. But I've questioned my role many times. Like, why am I here? Why, that's a whole other story.
One thing about it is that as black people, when we see somebody that looks like us, we relate to them more, and hopefully they relate to us more.
As you should.
So it's more, we feel more comfortable. We're able to let our guard down. And you were talking about trauma, and that's what we're here to talk about today. Trauma with your people.
With my people,
We're
people,
traumatized too. Traumatized, and we're going to dissect white privilege today. Now, you have a website.
I do.
And you talk about white privilege on there. And you also have a book coming out. How did all this come about, you being in the forefront of fixing this trauma within your people?
That's a big question. So I started working with white people in my earlier 20s.
You've been working with white people all your life. You were born,
that's true.
You were born
but
white.
Specifically working with white people around breaking down racism in our lives and in the society. Started in my 20s, where me and some other people started an organization called Y-Step, and we worked with white youth.
White Step?
Y-Step.
Oh, Y-Step. Okay.
Yeah, Youth Step towards addressing racism. So we were working with white youth. More recently, I've been pushing my work into working with adults, specifically because I've been in the education world for a while. I want to work with white teachers because I see how much pain and trauma a lot of times is happening in the classroom. But my book specifically and some of this work came out because, as a white person, I'm constantly asking, like, what more can I do? Like, what more can happen to actually shift what's going on? And, we've obviously seen white privilege and whiteness kind of coming up in the media much more since Trump came into office, but that doesn't mean there hasn't been racism before that, right?
Yeah.
It's just become a little bit more maybe in the eye. But in 2016, there was a lot of just, you could feel the collective energy of just like, what the fuck is going on? Black men were getting killed left and right. Police officers were just getting non-indicted, let off. And so I was just asking myself, like, there was a minister at the time and another friend of mine, a black woman, who was just kind of like, all right, white people, get it together. Like, what are you doing? Right. And, and so I asked myself, what more can I do? I had recently just come across several white people who were confused about white privilege and didn't think it exists. And I thought at that point I'd done a good amount of work around white privilege and white stuff. And so I said, okay, well, maybe it's my time to write more. And so I started a blog. It started on Facebook, and then it turned into a blog. And I was going to do 100 days of white privilege. So I was going to write every day to talk about different experiences of white privilege showing up in my life or in my surroundings, to be able to go deeper and not just say, oh, white privilege is driving while white. That's one. But there's so much. And so in that process, people kept commenting, you should turn this into a book. You should turn this into a book. And this is something that people need to know. And so I also, in that process, started realizing the wider impact that white privilege had. I think I understood it on a cognitive level, like in my mind, but I didn't really understand the deep sense in my body. And so when I started writing about it every day, I realized how much the bubble of whiteness keeps white people from even having to experience daily impacts of stress, of harm.
Explain what the bubble is, because you said the bubble of whiteness.
Yeah.
Like
it's kind of hard to explain. I felt it really deeply when I was in my writing. But for example, when I'm forgetting her name, the young woman who was killed at the MacArthur BART station. Mia Wilson, thank you. When Nia was killed, there was a collective trauma within the black community. I felt it because of the people I was around. I have a young black woman who lives with me. It was an old student of mine, and she couldn't get out of bed. Yeah. She didn't want to leave the house. She was scared to go on BART. Like, there was a collective harm. White people, me included, were like, that's fucked up. I'm going to go protest, right? I'm going to go down there and like, this is wrong. I didn't have a collective fear in my body. Yeah. I didn't feel like I was going to get targeted. I didn't, so every time a black person I feel like is killed, this is one example. And brown people too, like Latinx folks, like they're same kind of experience of when you have that type of trauma and that type of hurt actively happening against you because of what you look like, it is felt within the larger community. So when my parents, when I was walking out the door to go to school, neither one of them had a feeling of, and they weren't together, but they didn't have a feeling of, I hope she makes it home today. Gotcha. There's not a feeling of, I have to teach you how to talk to police because you could actually get killed. I have to teach you how to be respectful so much so that people don't think that your behavior is going to be harm. White people don't have to do that. We've never been taught how to actually protect ourselves in the world because we don't experience like that same level of attack. And so there's a bubble that we walk in of like, everything's just kind of, it's good.
You don't have the same fears.
There's not the same things. And so that actually impacts our whole demeanor, system, everything. And so that to me is where the bubble is. And the bubble also, there's also blinders that the bubble happens. So when you have privilege on any level, it creates blinders. So it makes it so you don't even see outside and don't see what's going on around you because you don't have to. As a white person with privilege, you could walk through life and not even know what's going on for other people, and none of that is going to impact you making it in life, if that makes sense.
White people historically have a very long history of being very insensitive to black issues.
Yes.
I say that because I want to ask you, do you still deal with white people who are very insensitive to black people's struggles and issues?
I mean, you can't be in America without coming across people like that. But I don't.
Do you deal with them personally?
I mean, I think they cross through my life for sure. I've worked in the education system for a long time. So, yeah, I think because I'm in the Bay Area, it's difficult sometimes to actually decipher who actually really believes that because there's such a politically correctness around things that sometimes people don't share outright. And I haven't spent much time in the South, but I've heard, you know, it's like a friend of mine. She's like, I'd rather deal with racists who are actually racist. They're going to share it with me. You know who they are. Whereas in the places like the Bay, it can be.
It's hidden.
It's like watered down in some ways,
it's
but
hidden.
it's still there, right? The creek is still running even if you can't see it all the time.
When you go down south, you going to know who's racist.
Yeah.
Because they have no problem with telling you, I don't like your black ass.
Exactly.
You feel me?
So in the Bay, you're basically saying it's a bunch of undercover races, and it's hard to decipher who.
Yeah, but there also exists. Like I was talking off the camera about this young woman who lives with me. She just started working. I'm not going to name the spot because I don't want them to get mad. But she started working in a bagel shop that is in a more affluent white area.
Okay.
And so she tells me stories every day about how these wealthier white people will come in and just the treatment that they treat her, and also just the way in which they show up in the world, the entitlement, that just like complete, excuse me, can you take care of me? Like there's just so much
Do they say, excuse
entitlement.
me?
Yeah, they probably don't.
Do
'Cause
they
white
say,
people are,
excuse me?
are rude.
'Cause, it's not an excuse me, the scenario
Right.
for the most part.
Right.
They have the, hey,
Yeah.
come help.
Right. And that's how culture gets woven into the, you know, white people. That's what I've learned so much too, is like I've learned so many of my manners from black people.
Yeah.
So many of the ways and how you show up in the world that's respectful to others is from black and brown people. I didn't learn that from white people. And I think that a lot of times white people believe that we are nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you ask other people, like, really? That's interesting, because that's not actually what I've noticed. I'm not saying all white people are rude or all white people are mean at all. I'm just saying I think there can be a cultural a cultural way of growing up to where we don't recognize how rudeness has been shaped by like white culture. If that makes sense. White culture has been shaped.
You said something about the way you were brought up. It's low. So tell us a little bit about your background or where you're from, and you said your parents weren't together.
Yeah.
And everything. So just let us know a little about you so we can probably dive in to see where you're coming from, or what position we can take from what your upbringing, because you also said off camera that you didn't even understand it till you got older.
Mm-hmm.
Like you lived this
Definitely.
whole life of
Yep.
not knowing about white privilege, and then
Mhm.
one day it was like,
Yeah. It wasn't one day, but it was.
yeah,
So I was, I'm a product of two white people. My father has been in this country, his family lineage that goes back to 1700. So my dad has a very long line of whiteness being,
was he well off? Was your family well off, or
my dad's family was middle class. His father was a
Okay.
dentist.
Okay.
Yeah, so my mom's side, she's from England, so all of her family's in England. And my mom left England when she was 18. My parents met in India, which is how I got my name. I was named after a woman that my mom knew for. My mom lived there for many years, met my dad, and they came together, had me and my sister in Australia, and then came to the States. So that's relevant because I grew up and then they broke up. But I was raised mostly by my mom. My dad, too. My dad has always been around. But I had a different experience of growing up with a white mother from Europe versus a white father from the United States. And I could actually feel the difference in how they related to the world based in where they grew up.
Okay.
And I say that because I feel like white people who are born and raised and have generations in this land are way more impacted.
okay? Impacted how?
Impacted by even having ability to talk about race, having
Okay.
ability to talk about racism. Like people,
Their
my European,
their blinders are more up.
yeah, the generational lineage of white people in America is so deeply challenged. Like there's just so many issues that whiteness has been covered up and acted like it's normal. Whereas in Europe and places like that, not to say that Europeans are, there's England colonized a lot of places. So I'm not saying because my mom's from England, they're all clear and, free of things. But my English family, like you get to talk to people about stuff. And there's not so much fragility. There's not so much like defensiveness. Are you calling me a racist? Well, no, we're just talking about race. Like, white people in this country are so quick to jump to that point. But yeah, so like you were saying, I was raised mostly in white towns up until I left when I was 18. And I went to college, and then when I moved to the Bay Area, my friend group started expanding and a lot more diversity. I was really close with several black women in my life, and that just expanded. And so my life since I was 22 really shifted in who I was around. I also at that time took this workshop called the Challenging White Supremacy Workshop, and it was a year long, like once a Saturday or twice a month.
Who taught this?
This woman, Sharon Martinez, who I still look up to as a mentor. She is extremely.
No, I'm not specifically who. Or whatever, like black.
Oh, it was white people.
Oh, white people.
Yeah.
Okay.
White people teaching
And
white people.
what was the name of it?
Challenging White Supremacy Workshop.
Challenging White Supremacy. Gotcha.
And I think in that, I was really opened up to information that I never got taught in school.
Okay.
You know, stuff that history, things that I felt like, you know, you take the red pill in the Matrix, all of a sudden you're like, what? You know, growing up white in America oftentimes means you are segregated in whiteness.
Gotcha.
And you don't have that much experience with, and that's because of housing laws, that's government stuff, redlining, all that stuff has impacted how we do not actually have relationship with each other. And because of that, I think white people just get extremely ignorant and really don't know what's going on outside of it, and they don't have to, because we live in so much privilege that we don't actually have to understand other people's experiences to make it in the world.
But they're not trying to, for the most part.
No,
they're not
for the
trying
most
to,
part, no.
and also
Trying to what?
trying to understand the next person's perspective.
Yeah.
They don't care about what's going on in the hood because they plan on never being to the hood unless the hood becomes the hot real estate.
Which that's what Oakland is
That's
now,
what's
right?
happening now. Like,
So y'all saying y'all think white people don't try to understand what black people are going through? I'm trying to get clear
No,
on what y'all
no.
saying.
I think the most of them don't.
and I'm gonna tell you my experience, and this is just me being in Oakland, being a businessman in Oakland. When my neighborhood, where my barbershop got gentrified, they were calling the police on me before they even met me, because I had a lot of black people hanging out at my barbershop. They weren't seen as customers. They were seen as hanging out. Oh, it's too many black people there. They're selling drugs. I've never sold dope in my life. Not once have I ever sold a piece of dope or whatever. But I'm starting to have decoys come to my barbershop now, because there's all these phone calls from the new neighborhood watch. You know what I'm saying? And I go introduce myself and I tell them straight up, if y'all want to meet me, come see me or whatever, I'm right here or whatever. Y'all not patronizing my business, but y'all got a lot to say about my business.
Right.
Hold on. So some would say white people know exactly what they're doing. It's not that they're being ignorant. They're purposely want to dominate black people for power. How do you guys feel about that? White people aren't ignorant, or they don't know what they're doing, or they're not purposely just focused on themselves. They know exactly what they're doing. They want to exterminate black people. They want black dollars, and they want black people almost to revert back to slavery.
That's true, and I believe some of them do know, but some of them are just really living off their white privilege. Like, no, that's impossible. That business can't be that thriving. It gets to the point to where, when gentrification happens, no matter what's been going on for the last 50 years, whatever they think needs to be going on needs to start happening. You know what I'm saying? So now you're trying to change the whole dynamic of this whole community by your beliefs. And that's where the white privilege comes in. And you can't come in and think the way you're thinking is wrong when you're not even trying to meet this community.
So is there a difference between white privilege and white power?
Yes.
What's the difference?
Well, what reference are you using white power in?
White power and I have the power to do as I please, so I do as I please. I have the power to kick you out of this home, so I'm going to kick you out of this home. I have the power to kick you out this school, so I'm going to kick you out this goddamn school.
Right.
Is there a difference in the two?
I think it's using white privilege to do something, because I can walk through the world and get white privilege no matter if I use that power or not, right?
Okay.
So I think it's when someone then takes that privilege to use something against people, then it becomes white power, I guess. But white privilege, I don't have to use my power to get it. I could walk out the street right now and I'm going to benefit from white privilege.
You could get waited on in the line at the grocery store before me.
Yep.
If they ask you, can I help you?
Right.
While they just look past me.
Right. Or I write a check and they take it, and then you write a check and they ask you for identification.
Yeah.
right? So there's going to be those little things that are going on constantly, whether I'm actually using it to my benefit or trying to use it against somebody else. So I think to answer your question before, I do think there's a good amount of people that are actually trying to specifically exterminate people of color. And I think a huge majority of white people are really ignorant and have blinders up so much that they don't even see their behavior. And similar, like I hear you with your barbershop, there was an example that I think is so deep to me, but in West Oakland, there was a Baptist church that had been there for like 65 years, playing music every Sunday. Anyone,
I know what you're talking
you know,
about.
yeah. So this white woman, and I don't know her name, but she moved into the neighborhood without, understanding the culture of that space, and started making noise complaints, saying that this church is being too loud.
Choir practice.
Yeah.
It was choir practice. They were complaining about the choir practice.
And they had never gotten a complaint before that. So, but this woman went to the city. That church started getting, I think, fined $250 every day until they actually stopped their music. And then if they didn't by a certain date, they were going to get a $2,500 fee or something like that. It was ridiculous. So basically, her white privilege, I don't want to use the word trumped. Her white privilege took over a long time cultural experience that did not have impact in a negative way from people that lived there before. So she used her white power and her privilege, she used her privilege and power to stop a black church from doing things that was not causing harm to anyone because she believed her comfort was more important than other people's lives.
My question to you is, was it her or was it a government that also backed her?
Both.
Mm.
But it backed her because of her privilege.
You have to remember, though, the government is full of white privilege. The government is ran by white people. The laws are made for white people.
Yeah.
If I get arrested for something and a white person gets arrested for something, it's more likely than not I'm going to go to jail.
Right.
And they will get, it could get tossed out.
Right.
It could be used as a learning lesson.
Right.
One of the biggest ones that I always bring up is when the white man raped the other white lady at Stanford, and the judge said, "I do not want to ruin
Brock
this.
Turner.
Yeah, I do not want to ruin his life behind this one mistake."
Right.
I said, "How does he get this leniency
Right.
when he raped an unconscious woman?
Right.
But we can have a bag of weed, and now we're considered a dope dealer, a drug dealer, and now we need to be on probation, parole, or anything."
Right. And at the same time, just to say, at the same time, there was a black man who was I'm forgetting his name in the college he went to, but him and that same dude were both star athletes.
Mm-hmm.
They were both at prestigious schools doing their thing. The black man, same thing. He raped a woman in a way that it was publicly seen. Same thing, right? He got filmed in the alleyway. They both got arrested. The white man got let off. I think he spent 60 days in jail time and then was on probation.
And some fines or something.
The black man went straight to prison, didn't even go to regular jail, and ended up, I think he got a 15 to 25 year sentence or something like that. So both of them, neither one of them had anything other than the color of their skin determining their sentence.
And it's a broken system
Completely.
to me. I just think it's a broken system. You had something to say?
Yeah.
What are some solutions for white privilege?
Solutions to white privilege. I think, well, white privilege is going to constantly stay there, whether people want it or not, if the system doesn't shift and change. So the system is highlighting and privileging people based on their skin. It's like looking at the police system. Can the police system change? Or does it have to be completely transformed in a different system? So, but I think on an individual level, white people themselves, like we have to shift and change by how we use it. So being aware of how much it's impacting our lives can shift how we, like you said, use it for power, right? Take that privilege and make a difference and harm other people based in it. Or you can also use, if it's already in the system, how do I use my white privilege to benefit other people? How do I actually take this privilege to shift power and get other people the opportunities that maybe wouldn't have gotten it? So if you have a platform, always bringing people on that are not getting that same exposure, or there's a lot of things you could use. I mean, I would love to visualize like what our world would look like without white privilege, that's so far down the realm. So I think there's many things that have to happen to actually end that.
So you really actually feel like it can be ended?
I do.
Okay. Now, a question I did ask on my Instagram do you think white privilege is a disease, or like it can be cured? Because diseases can be cured, or is it something that is just here and it'll take change, but it has to be a unified change to cure this white privilege? Because one bad apple can already spoil the bunch.
Right.
So if somebody's holding on to this white privilege, it's not cured.
Right. That's a good question. I think internalized white superiority is a disorder that could be cured.
Okay.
I think white privilege is something that is external and internal. And so it's, anytime there's a disease, quote unquote, it's usually like there has to be something shifted within. There's work that has to happen within. I might be able to shift a lot of my internalized feelings of superiority. I might be able to shift how I relate to people, but the system and the society outside is still going to keep giving me benefits. So there has to be both things happening. A lot of the work that activists, social justice folks out there are really trying to shift the systemic things, the institutional ways it's showing up, but there has to be a shift inside too. And that relates to all things. We're all impacted by white supremacy. It's in the air. It's in the water we drink. It's everywhere we turn. And so there's such a wide amount of work that has to get done. And I don't necessarily think it's going to happen in my lifetime, but if I don't do work towards getting it to happen at some point, then I'm just part of the problem.
Yeah.
How are we all affected by white supremacy?
We're raised in a systematic way that says whiteness is better than others, right? We're raised in a way. I mean, I want to bring up some examples. I also don't want people to be offended, but there's a lot of things. Like you look in Black community in the way light skin is privileged above darker skin, right? Women, young women all the time, oh, you have good hair. You have, that's a way in which white supremacy has impacted Black community. That's, small ways or whatnot, but it's bigger than that. People, there's a lot of internal stuff, and I think we all drink some part of the Kool-Aid, and we all have to stop drinking the Kool-Aid in some type of way and start cleaning out our systems. And it's not my job to talk about how it impacts the Black community. That's actually, I don't like to do that, but I'm just trying to give a few examples just to show. But we're all, like, for example.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah, go
All
ahead.
right. All right. Because on one of your blogs, you said that, like, you had to cut back a little bit of your not whiteness, but you being successful in certain ways, so you're accepted by the Black community.
Well, I think when after that Challenging White Supremacy workshop, I was really taken aback by how much I was
Benefiting?
taking up space.
Okay.
I was walking in the world like, oh yeah, I got this. I could do this. I could do that, and
Confidence.
not realizing how much that was about too the internalized stuff that society, the media, everything I grew up was telling me. It's you could do this, you could do that because you're white, and I didn't really understand the impact of that. And so when I started really being in that space of learning, I had to take a step back. And when I took a step back, I had to actually stop talking so much, stop interrupting, and being much more asking, listening, questioning. And that's opened up my ability to hear people's stories, to not just take, because everyone in this room has been around white people who take up too much space, who just like, shut up, right? I mean, white people happen to take up a lot of space in meetings, in parties. You've been to a party where the white group comes in and just takes over the dance floor. There's a certain
they're more worried about their comfortability.
Yeah.
And so they'll make you uncomfortable for their comfort.
So for me, I had to take a step back and start noticing more, and noticing how I was taking up space, noticing the impact I was having. And in that, I had to shut down. And so it reduced my level of confidence in a way, and I don't think this is a bad thing. It was in a way of recognizing what is my right relationship with people that didn't actually have so much white cultural overtake, if that makes sense.
Some people would say we need to get back to segregation to where Black people and white people are completely separate, because that's when Black people were most prosperous. How do you feel about it?
I think when you force segregation, then that takes people away from choice. If Black community had the right to choose whether they wanted to be in Black community or in mixed race space or in white community, that's different than forcing people to be in it.
Didn't white people take our Black people choice away a long time ago?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. I think we were talking earlier, before desegregation, the Black community, thinking about the Black dollar. Wasn't it Magic Mike who did a little whole thing of trying to live for a certain amount of, like, the Black dollar does not stay in Black community. Before desegregation, the Black dollar stayed in Black community. You had Black Wall Street, which got burned down because of white people. But you had a way in which people were actually integrating because of being forced, which if you're being forced, it's not freedom, right? If you're choosing, then that's a choice. Then if people want to just be in a Black community to create that sense of collectivity, of connection, there's choice, there's freedom in that. It's not for me, what I think that there should be segregation, not at all, because I love Black people, I love brown people, I love all people. Like, I have really close people in my life, so I'm not going to ever say that that's what I want. Do I think if Black folks or brown folks come to me and they think that that's what they want? Cool. I totally believe that's what you need. Go ahead. That I'm not going to disagree with that, because I know a lot of people who do want to have Black communities without a lot of white influence. That makes sense. And I particularly feel, though, that it is about choice. Segregation was not choice. It was forced. And it was based in racism. It was based in white supremacy. So if you have a community that decides out of choice that they want to be within them, like their own folks, that's beautiful. Do that. Like, that's something that is about choice, but they have the choice to also not if they don't want to.
Who are you more at peace around, white or Black people?
That's a great question. Who am I more at peace around? I'm more at peace around people who are at peace with themselves. And sometimes that can be Black folks, some that's white folks. It's more about who people are within themselves. I have a hard time in general being around people who are not at peace with themselves, no matter what you look like. Because then they do a lot of projecting, they do a lot of shaming, blaming, want to do all kind of
lot of hate, hate
and
for
so
no reason.
There's hate of all color. There's people who are fake of all color, and to me, the people that I'm most comfortable around are people who are comfortable with themselves.
What are your dating preferences?
I don't have dating preferences, actually. It's interesting. People you don't date enough white people. That's because white people don't hit on me. I rarely.
Maybe it's because you got your hair wrapped up and you're giving off your this Afrocentric
I keep
vibe.
my hair wrapped up to keep my energy contained, because there's a lot of energy vampires in the world. But
they try to steal your energy.
Yes, I very strongly believe in energy. I don't know why. I don't have a strong preference. I used to specifically not date Black men. For a long time, for over 10 years. And that was really out of one of my best friends is a Black woman from New York. And years ago, it was like 15 years ago, we used to go out in the Bay and Black men would hit on me and not her. And I could see how much it impacted her.
Wait. Hold on. The Sealy Live the other day, we were just talking about this, right?
Yeah, go ahead. I want to hear this story.
Go deeper. Go deeper.
And I felt the impact that it had on her. And I would ask her, we had a few little small conversations. She would just brush it off like it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Then I would hear it more from other friends of mine, Black women. And then I would hear Black men in privacy, not in privacy, but in confidence, I guess, tell me, I don't date Black women. And I was so offended. I was like,
this is the reason why you stopped dating Black men.
Yeah, because for me, I would see how much, so being out with a Black man, for instance, and I just want to say I love Black women, and I do not take this personally, but Black women be like, you get those looks of like,
hating. You were about to say hating. Go ahead, say they be hating.
But they should be hating. I'm not saying it because I think that it's a bad thing. I actually don't. I feel like Black women love their men so strongly that it hurts. It impacts them to see another brother choosing a white woman, and I got it to some extent. I mean, as a white woman, I can only get it to so much, right? So for me at that time, the dating field is wide open. There's all kinds of people you can date. And I felt like that particular relationship, black men and white women, had the most stigma or harmful impact, however you want to think about it. And I was like, well, I don't have to date black men. There's so many other people that I could be dating. So I specifically took a point in which I did not date black men, and then I got sidelined by a black man who I fell in love with. But
Was it
a whole nother
you stopped
thing.
dating black men for others, or just because you felt it? Because I'm hearing is you start dating black men because of what was going on around you, not what a black man done to you.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No. Not because a black man has ever done anything to me.
Yeah.
I've been more harmed by white men than black men.
How do you respond when you hear a black man disrespect a black woman to you? What's your response?
My response is, why would you hate someone that looks like your mom? Why would you even have some type of preference that is very self-hating? To me that it hurts me because I just love black women. I think black women are the shit. I've been taught more by black women in my life than anybody. And so when black men say that to me, first I just laugh. I'm like, why would you say that to me, but you would never say that to a sister? Maybe you would. Maybe they would. I don't know. But I felt like it was really disrespectful, and it was a turnoff. It's a super turnoff. I'm like, you wouldn't date your own woman, like someone who looks like your sister, your mom.
But you don't date white men.
I do.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Oh, yeah, I would totally date a white man.
Okay.
I've said they don't hit on me.
Oh, they don't hit on you.
Like,
Gotcha.
very few white men. The few white men that I've even, like... Well, I mean, I've dated white men in the past. I'm not saying I've never dated white men. I've dated white women, white men, you know, across the spectrum. I don't discriminate. But...
31 flavors.
You know, or 32.
32 flavors. We creating a new flavor. No.
So now at this point in your life, you are black, white, lady. Where are you at this point in your life as far as your dating habits?
My dating habits. I don't have a preference. I really don't. I think like lately, the last couple people I've dated have been black men.
What got you back started on black men? What made you say, you know what, I'm going to date black men?
The Migos?
No.
Okay.
No, it was just somebody, I had gotten out of a relationship that I was in with a woman, and it was, I don't need to get into it. It was hard. It was a very challenging relationship, and I wasn't trying to date anyone. And this brother who I knew from a place that I went to often, he would kind of talk to me, and I was like, leave me alone, leave me alone. I wasn't even trying to date anybody. And we just kind of kept talking, and our conversation just got deeper and deeper. And he is probably one of the smartest people I know. I really cared a lot about him. We had a really strong bond, and it took me a minute because I was like, I'm not trying to date a black man. And then it just kind of happened, and I fell in love with him, and it just opened up that question for me. And then for me, then I had to say, am I going to let other people's uncomfort stop me from doing something that actually feels good, that feels right?
Now, are your children mixed?
I have a daughter who's mixed. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you actually have a black baby's father. Father, or your daughter's father is black. Black?
This is TMI, but she has a black mother, actually. She's not my biological child.
Okay.
She came into my life... anyway, I don't need to tell the details of my daughters. That's her own personal business. But she is mixed, but it was her biological mother who's black.
Okay, got you.
Oh, how is it raising a biracial child?
How is it? I mean, there's a lot of things about it. I love my daughter. She is amazing. She is truly amazing. But it is interesting being a white woman because I'm constantly, whenever there's something that comes up for her around blackness, I often tell her to talk to somebody else. Like recently the N-word came up, and she's like, I can't use that word because it's a bad word. I'm like, you need to talk to somebody else besides me about whether you can or can't later in your life. Yeah, right now it's a swear word. You're 11. But it's not my conversation. It's not. I will never have that conversation with her because as her, a young mixed race black woman in the world, that's not for her to ask her white mom about.
Yeah, she has her own journey, and you don't want to lead her a certain direction, and you be wrong.
Yeah.
And now, Mom, you told me this.
Right.
And it's like, Well, I was coming from my perspective, and my perspective might be wrong.
Yeah. I mean, my perspective comes from this body, this skin that I live in, this understanding. And so there's certain things that I just can never talk to her about. I mean, I've learned so much and a lot of things, about raising a young woman who is very strong and confident in her blackness, as well as understanding and recognizing her mixedness, because she doesn't walk in the world as I think mixed race people might see this differently. I think that she walks in the world as a mixed person and as a young black woman. So
both of them.
I don't know. It's confusing because I don't live in that body. So it's hard for me to say. I know a lot of mixed race women and men who would say, no, I'm black because I walk in the world as black.
They're seen as black for the most part.
Yeah, and it probably depends on your lightness
Yeah.
or your hair tag. Like, there's a lot of things that will depend on how the world sees you. But I also want her to understand that her experiences in life are also going to be different than, say, a dark-skinned black woman, right? A black woman has 2 dark-skinned parents. There's going to be a different experience that she has based on that, even though she is a black woman with mixed what was the word? Mixed DNA.
Gotcha.
Right?
Let me ask you another question, just a bio or science question, I guess. If a mixed race person has a child with they create a child with a white person, this child comes out looking completely white, would you consider that child a black child? Or a mixed race child, or would you consider that child a white child?
I would consider them a mixed race child.
Why so?
Because they have African ancestry. They have DNA that holds a history way beyond just what they look like in the world. You can't deny that their ancestors have a particular relationship to the world that maybe you don't see it every time you walk in the room and see them, but they're always going to hold that. They're always going to hold that generational lineage. Yes, they'll have a lot of European lineage in them too. But I met somebody in college who I thought he was white the whole time I knew him. And it wasn't until my senior year, I'm like, oh, you have a black dad? He must be light skinned because you couldn't really see it. Would I now look at him as a white man? No. Oh, okay. I understand you have blackness in you. You have African ancestry in you. And I would never deny that from somebody. That is a really beautiful and deep root of your lineage.
Do all people have African in them?
It's a great question. I mean, originally, right, we're all from Lucy. Lucy was the generation. She was the mother of all people, in my belief. She's from Africa. But, as many years have passed down, our DNA has been watered down and more specified based in region of the world because of how long it took, right? Our genes, our DNA shifted. So if I do a DNA test, I'm not going to come up African.
I don't even believe those tests. I don't. My one of my sisters had it done from 2 different companies, and 2 different things came back. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know.
Did they do the AfricanAncestry.com?
She did. I forgot.
I was curious about that one.
Yeah, she did 2 of them. She did 2 of them, and she said she was going to do the 3rd. I think she didn't want to pay for the 3rd, but she did 2, and they said 2 different things, and it's the same DNA given, unless they just given. I don't know. I think
part of me also thinks it's the government trying to keep all of our information.
I think it's a scam. I just think it's a scam. People are so concerned about where we come from that they are playing on people's thoughts or whatever. So
we're a country with a lot of people having no homeland, nothing to grasp onto.
In your experience, have you ever dealt with white people who said the N-word?
Not with the ER at the end, not directly, but I've heard people. So at the school that I worked at, I had to deal with a lot of situations where a white teacher or a white student used the N-word when in situations of like reading something out loud. Or one time there was a situation, this white girl said the N-word with the A at the end and was basically saying, why can't I say this word? And then a young black girl was really pissed, like, so then they came to me and asked me to do a circle. So I've done restorative justice circle. So I come across.
So you did restorative justice circle on the N-word,
Uh-huh.
the usage.
I've done a couple of them.
Okay.
Yeah. It's come up a lot.
How did it turn out?
I thought it turned out really well. I've done a couple. One of them, it was hours. And the white girl really learned a lot. I think she really learned a lot about how white space is not comfortable for black people. you know, and didn't understand that. She thought just because it was a space that she thought everyone should feel comfortable, didn't understand that there was mostly white people, mostly white cultural ways of talking, white inference, white ways of dealing with things. And so in the conversation, she didn't even understand the impact of even saying that word. And the young black woman who was deeply impacted was able to share the pain, able to share the hurt. And I think at first the white girl was like, why am I being blamed for something that everyone does? And I think and I told her, I said, this is a blessing for you to learn this lesson. Like not many people get to learn this. This is
I think
you.
the most part about that is in the music. Like the most popular music, we as a lot of black artists use the N-word a lot. And you'll be around a white person and they're singing a song. When that N-word drops in the song, they don't say nothing. And it's like, it amazes me. It amazes me sometimes how they're cognitive of what's going on. Like, let me not say it. But it also makes me question, do you say it when black people aren't around?
I don't.
No,
but I think
I'm not,
a lot more white people do.
Yeah, I'm not saying you or whatever, but you know they'll not say it while they're around black people. But then because the song is the song. Yeah, I think you're cognitive. Oh, I'm around these black people. Let me not say the N-word in the song.
But a lot of people don't even know that. I mean, what is it? Last year, Kendrick kicked some white girl off the stage because she was, you know, singing along to his words and she didn't bleep out the N-word. And then afterwards, a lot of white people, well, if they can say it, why can't we? You know, I actually wrote, this was in my book, I wrote about this because I was so frustrated. I'm like, white people, stop. You cannot say the word no matter what, no matter how many people sing it in a song, no matter, because we will never understand the impact that word has.
The pain from
there's no, what word has been used against white people specifically that has had the type of trauma that the N-word has connected to it?
This is my thought. I might be wrong in whatever, like how black people use the N-word. White people start using cracker. Start calling your friend crackers, you know what I'm saying? Or honky, whatever you want to, you know, if that's what you choose to do.
Right.
Because we took that word and changed it for a term of endearment for ourselves.
Right.
And when we hear it come from other people or whatever, we're not sure where it's coming from. We may use it as a term of endearment, but where is this coming from for you?
Right.
Hood therapy.